Hi Homeworthy, I'm Fiona. Welcome to my home in London. Come on in, I can't wait to show you round.
I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we're now offering a membership plan that gives our supporters early and exclusive access to new videos.
Hi, Homeworthy.
I'm Roz.
You're here at my home in Los Angeles.
Come on in. I can't wait to show you around.
With this membership, we invite you to open more doors, discovering new homes, rooms, and personalities available only to those with the keys to our guest house. You'll be part of a community of people who are just as passionate as you are about interior design. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, my name is Fiona de Lys. I'm a colour consultant and I'm based in London. We're here in my home and I'm here to tell you what I love about my home, what I love about colour and what I love about my work. My home is a Georgian cottage. It was built around 1750. It's a mostly timber framed structure. So it's a very quirky building with lime walls. It moves, it breathes. It has a lot of atmosphere. The light moves in very mysterious ways, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely love it. So when I first viewed the property, I literally had to wade through brambles to get to the front door. The building had been unlived in for about 7 years. And when I walked in, I knew instantly this was the house for me. It was calm, quiet, you could really feel the love in here. The previous owners hadn't renovated it since the 1970s, so it pretty much was a gut job. There wasn't even any central heating here. The bathroom was downstairs, there was a Jack and Jill bedroom upstairs, which I wanted to change. So it really was a project about bringing the house back to life. And I had gone through some big life changes prior to that. So it felt very much a symbiotic process in restoring myself, healing myself, restoring the house, healing the house literally. It has lime walls, and what I learned for the first time is that the house needs to breathe. So I went about using lime paints to protect the walls and to find the colours that really worked for my personal story, my narrative, my heritage. The process was really difficult because it meant bringing up floors, moving walls around. It's a listed building, so I had to get consent, which was incredibly difficult, working with the local council at times. But it was really worth it in the end for me. So we're in my living room. I don't have a formal entrance. The Georgian cottages sometimes didn't, so you would have a front door that walks straight into the living room. It's a double-fronted cottage with windows on either side. So I've had to make the space cosy as an entrance, but also practical and functional as the main living room area. So I'd love to show you around at some of my favourite pieces. One of my prized possessions is my collection of woodland scenes, and these are things that I've just picked up on my travels. Every single picture here is a painting. It varies in age. Some are antique, some are mid-century. And what's really important for me about this whole wall here is that I feel I'm submerged in a woodland. It's a real connection to where I grew up in Hampstead by Hampstead Heath. And just to come in and see the trees against this fantastic green wall just lifts my spirits. I have the woods on my doorstep too, so there is a narrative here, not only with my past, but also with where I happen to live. So this is one of my favourite features, my woodland scene. So this armoire here is I was told it was Bavarian, but I have a feeling it might be Italian. It was bought from a thrift store, and it has the most beautiful carvings of basically an urn with what I think are acanthus leaves coming out, some scrolls, and then on either side different features, which is what I particularly love. So I like playing on symmetry, but I also like there to be a difference in the symmetry. So here we have the fruit with the pears and the grapes and possibly a pomegranate, whereas here we've got something that might represent vegetables like a split pod of peas, and you can just see the peas coming out. It's a really beautiful piece. I understand that it was adapted by somebody in the 1950s on the inside who was a tobacconist, and he had put shelves inside originally so he could dry his tobacco leaves. It's a very special piece, and because I don't have an entrance hallway, I've adapted it so that it houses all my shoes, coats, scarves, hats, gloves, bags. So when you come in, you don't see any of that at all. It's just neatly hidden in here with a few hats across the top. The pots are really special to me. These are antique salting pots. So originally they would have been filled with salt and meat would have been put in there to preserve them. I absolutely adore the glazed patina on them, and salting pots would sometimes be tilted for ease of access, so they roll about quite nicely, and I think they make a really lovely feature into the living room. They kind of remind me of that whole concept of from plant to plate, something that's really important to me. The pot that has gained a bit of popularity is actually this very special confit pot over here, which I call the Toscana pot. I got it on a sourcing trip to Italy in Tuscany, and it has the most beautiful patina. The image of the pot was featured here in Homes and Gardens magazine, which won Colour of the Month award with Edward Bulmer Natural Paint. So this pot has been used on quite a few styling shoots, and it's my lucky pot, I call it. It's very different from your average confit pot, which tends to be more yellow and plain, such as this one here, which is a lovely big one here, as you can see. This is a particularly special one because it has holes in the bottom, so it would have been used for drainage. That one over there has a paint patina on it that I've never seen anywhere before. Another two of my favourite pots in my room are the antique Polynesian water vessels, which have 3 spouts. They're handmade and they have the most beautiful hand patterns around them. I've never seen anything like them before. They're very rare and they're very precious to me. All my pots are precious to me because I relate pots very much to the human condition, us being vessels, carrying what's important to us in our lives, and pots originally would have held commodities that were important to us too, such as water, wines and oils. And speaking on that, I can't wait to show you my very special walnut jug collection in the kitchen later on. This fantastic sofa I picked up in an auction for £50 and I absolutely love it. I've thrown a whole load of scatter cushions on it. It's so comfortable to relax on. It's actually long enough to sleep on, not that I ever have, but it is long enough as a single bed. It's a great piece to relax on in the sun, reading a book, especially in the winter when you just get that heat falling onto your body. It's one of my favourite places to sit so I can just look outside. And I also love the random combination of cushions as well, just mixing up the colours in a very natural and organic way. I love decorating with nature, and I usually use real live flowers or dried flowers such as this arrangement here. Particularly having been a florist for a long time, I love to forage with what I can find in the garden or the outside. But these particular branches here are artificial, and I put them up usually for Christmas, and they end up staying up for a lot longer because I just think they're really sweet and cute, and they remind me of the roses outside in the garden that have the little red buds that are starting to come up. So I sometimes leave them up there. I'm very inspired by natural elements in the house, so I try to bring them in wherever I can. And being a Georgian cottage with quite low ceilings, light can be a challenge for growing plants, so I like to add these little touches of nature wherever I can. This is the original fireplace here. It's really deep, and I was looking for a cast iron grate and I couldn't find one I quite liked, and I actually found this chucked outside somebody's house down the road one evening when I was out jogging. So I brought it back home. It was incredibly heavy, but what I really love about it is actually got the emblem of the Fleur de Lys, which is quite a sweet, quirky little ode to my surname, de Lys. So at the back there are 3 Fleur de Lys signs. I also love to throw lavender on it when I've got a live fire. I grow lavender in the garden, and so does my neighbour, especially with the south-facing sun here. So when I've got the fire on, I love to scatter lots of lavender on there. It sparks, it smells, and I have a little pot of it here, and I just literally throw it on with the little shovel here, and it just makes a really cosy winter evening's fire. These 2 chairs here are part of the same set with the sofa. It was basically the deal. I couldn't take just the sofa, I had to take the chairs as well. And as it happens, they worked out really well. One of them is literally collapsed underneath, but that becomes the dog chair with a blanket on it whenever anybody visits with a dog. So that's the allocated dog throne, whereas guests get to use the hair-free one. I actually often hear from people this concern about mixing red and green and it perhaps making a room feel a bit Christmassy. For me, I actually don't think that red and green together looks anything like Christmas, funnily enough. And the reason for that is because if you actually look at nature outside, you will see that there are a lot of natural combinations in the garden that involve different shades of pink to dark pink and into red and green. So the trick to it not being too Christmassy would be to use muted colours. So if you have a look, for example, the reds here, they're quite antiqued, dull colours, and I think sometimes if you use a material where you've got a texture and a pattern and you get these 2 tones here, so you've got the deeper reds with perhaps the lighter colours coming through, that breaks it up a little bit. So don't be afraid. I would encourage people not to be afraid of mixing red and green together. It's a beautiful combination, but I would also layer it with perhaps other colours like the chartreuse greens, maybe some soft dusky pinks and apricots, and maybe some dusky oranges. Then you really do diffuse that whole idea of it being anything too Christmassy. The other thing that I really love about this room is I have a bit of a gripe with radiators, especially if they're not antique old ones. And when bearing in mind that this house didn't have any heating, I had some very good radiators put in, but I don't like looking at them and I don't particularly like painting them. So I like to mask them. And what I have done here is I've taken a beautiful half screen that I found in an antique shop and I've placed it across the radiator, so it almost acts as a little background, again going back to that whole idea of layering coming from my set design days. So I'm layering behind the chairs to give a background, a pretty background, but actually there's a very practical reason there for me. I'm hiding the view of the radiator as well. What I learnt in moving to this very special property is the importance of understanding the atmosphere of a house. And by that I mean we bring our own energy into a house, but ultimately, particularly old buildings, they very much have their own character and personality, and you need to settle with the space. You need to learn to read the light. You need to understand how the light moves through the rooms in order to think about how you want to live in those spaces, how those spaces make you feel. And this was really part of this restorative process, was about understanding how do I want to feel in this space? How do I want it to make me function on a daily basis? And how do I want to bring my narrative into it through colour, through natural light movement and through decor? So these are the sort of important elements that I bring to my work as a colour consultant. This house has really helped me understand the importance of narrative, story, light, and on the subject of light, my mother was a Tai Chi teacher and I grew up with quite a lot of Japanese influence in my life, very Taoist influence, which was a really interesting combination because she was Italian, but also I lived in an arts and crafts cottage. So all these extraordinary elements of understanding light, pattern, they were very much part of my heritage in how I understood design, texture, gardens, and how all of these elements can link together in creating spaces that are very, very personal to somebody. So the next room in the house is the dining area, and in order to transition really nicely into that space with the colours, given that I'm using a pink against a green, I've used a very subtle pink blanket on the edge of the sofa just to help the eye transition into the change in colour from this space into the next. So come with me and take a look at the dining room. Okay, so here we are inside the dining room. It's a small but really warm, cosy space which I've painted in a lovely shade of pink on the top with a slightly warmer colour on the panelling. These colours make me think of Italy, think of the Riviera, the beautiful colours of the buildings there. I'm totally transported in this space. The two key features of this room really are the table, which has beautiful claw and ball foot, and the sideboard here, the drawers. Both are my grandfather's from Italy, so these are very special pieces for me. I really love the painting on here, the colours, the delicate flowers. It's such a quirky, beautiful piece, and I use this to house my table linen, stationery, all the practical things that I might need. And then on top I have the Casa Pupa lamps, which I got from a client when I had my previous flower shop. She was getting rid of them. She hated anything from the 1950s and wanted everything modern. So I snapped these up because these are an absolute steal. They are pomegranates and they're just simply beautiful. The shades I found in a thrift store, so I changed the original shades, which were orange, to this lovely rich red, and for me it really, really works. And then scattered on the top are a collection of these beautiful gemstones, which I just think are really pretty, and I love layering with natural elements. So it doesn't have to be just botanicals, it can be minerals as well. And I think the treat on the top really is the ostrich egg, which again I found in another thrift store, and I absolutely love this. It's such a beautiful piece. So it sits here quite proudly as the only egg in the room. The dining table, I have memories of using this in Italy. The chairs I found from a friend who's a mid-century dealer. I think they work really well. Again, I love this soft muted red, which goes back to what I was saying before about if you're using red, try to go for colours sometimes that are a little bit aged and antiqued, like this colour here. And for winter, I always throw a really nice, comfortable sheepskin rug. So when my guests or when I'm sitting down here at the table and I've got the log fire on particularly, I just feel really, really cosy. These two chinoiserie panels are really extraordinary, and I'm yet to finish them off. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do that. These are silk. It's black silk, and they've been hand painted with this beautiful scene of birds of paradise and flowers and greenery. They're just so delicate, but I particularly like the fact that they're on a black background. So I have two of them here, and I think what I might do at a future stage is put them inside a beautiful frame and have them glass mounted so I can put them up on the wall. And the other reason I like them in here is because they balance the black that comes from the antique Indian desk over here. This is a really special piece. It's probably about 200 years old, and it has very useful storage. But what's particularly interesting, a friend of mine who's a gardener said that he thinks that it actually has cardamom leaves painted on it. So these could potentially be cardamom heads with little cardamom leaves. And I love the fact that this particular part of the desk is less worn than the rest of it, and that's because it usually sits up like this. On either side of the desk I have these huge tall grasses which I once used on a styling job. The theme was something quite magical and mystical, and we were approaching winter, so I used a lot of these scattered around, and I just love the colour of them. I love the muted tones and how feathery and magical they look. I couldn't bear to get rid of them, so I've propped them on either side and they just about fit in with my low ceilings. And they beautifully frame a very special painting of a bird's nest here with the egg, and I have here an actual nest that I found that had fallen out of a tree. These are all mementos of early childhood memories to me, which have naturally come my way when I've been on sourcing trips. So this is quite a special little corner for me, in a very different way to perhaps the other features of the room. Because I have the woodlands on my doorstep, often when I go out in the mornings or in the evenings, I can hear the woodpeckers. And here I have a vase which I think is probably about 1940s, 1950s. I found this vase which has the woodpecker on the edge of what is pretending to be a trunk. And these are ferns that I've picked from the local woodland, and I've just left them to dry. So again, not only is it something that I think is really pretty to look at, but it's just reminding me of those moments when I go out for walks in the woodlands and the beauty of nature that I see. Over here in this cabinet, I have a collection of wooden block prints, and they're all quite different. So at some point, I'm really looking forward to the idea of getting them out, playing with my paint colours, and maybe doing some block print work on silk or canvas or linen. I'm quite fond of those over there. And over here I have, on this little shelf here, a lovely collection of books that are to do with nature. So I've got geology, I've got birds of the British Isles, I've got stories called On the Nature Trail, woodland trees. These are all books that I've just found when I've been out and about, and I really like the way they play on those muted greens and reds and apricot colours. This is just my little nature corner over here. The style of my home is very eclectic, and this is because I don't adhere to any trend. I never have. I think it's really important to acquire things through time that speak to you on a personal level, and then eventually you can amalgamate all these things to actually create the style that's important to you. I've decorated my home definitely in a very colourful way, but what I really like about the colours I work with is that they can be quite deep and strong, but also quite muted and aged. So in a way, I really like to work with antiqued colours. So greens and reds and perhaps purples and browns that look like they've been aged with time. Some of the items I've inherited are from my Italian grandfather in Italy, which are very much statement items in the home. And the rest of the items are things that I've just acquired through my styling career, through my travels, things that I've looked at and thought, that's got a really interesting story, and I want that to become part of mine. So I very rarely actually go to a shop to buy something new. Pretty much everything I have has either come from thrift markets, antique markets, auction houses, just things that I've not expected to find and that life has just tossed my way, a bit like opening a Pandora's box and just suddenly seeing something you think, I've got to have that. Going across the middle of this room is this original beam supporting the upstairs part of the house, and I wanted to make it a feature, so I painted it black so it worked with my black panels, and I did something different for a change. I used a gloss so you could really see it. And then going across the top of it, I hung some hops. So if anybody hasn't ever used hops before, I really encourage you to use them. When they first arrived, they were still a little bit green and fresh, because when you order hops, usually they come quite fresh because that's when they're at their most supple and they can bend. The smell was absolutely intoxicating. It was just deliriously delicious. And I put them up and you just leave them because then they dry and they crisp, and they've become quite a feature of the room now. So this is basically a hops ceiling. On one side here, I took the wallpaper down because I wanted to put a lime wash effect on the ceiling and I wanted it to breathe, whereas on the other side it had been papered when I first renovated. So I've taken the paper down here as part of a second stage of restoring the building, which I've started to do by changing one wall here with the colour, going from a lime wash effect of a colour that I mixed myself using paints that I've got left over, so I get this slightly mottled effect on the walls, which I really, really love here. And then I mixed a slightly darker colour to set this off, as opposed to the flat colour which we've got on one side here. So this is my corner of experimenting with mixing colours, mixing my own paints, and going for an effect on a lime wash wall. The story with some of the African artifacts I've got around the house is a story that links me to my father, actually, who spent quite a lot of time living in Santa Fe and Albuquerque when I was a child. And I have collected some beautiful Cuba cloths, which I have upstairs. And to complement the theme in another part of the house, I've collected a few of these African masks. I don't actually know the age of them, but what I do know is that they are perhaps some of the more beautiful ones that I've seen. And so I've placed them on either side here. And my father was always interested in different cultures, and I remember that he used to collect things from South America and African drums or African musical instruments. So over here I just have this little ode to him, really. I would consider that my style is a little bit maximalist, but also in a way where I like there to be calm within it. So the maximalist element of my style very much comes from building layers, and I really enjoy building layers in 3D. So I like building them in depth or in height. But within those layers, I like there to be some kind of calm scattered about. So the maximalist part of me doesn't necessarily apply to having a room completely overwhelmed with lots of visual distraction. So there's sometimes a joke with the back room being a bistro, because in the evening, particularly when I've got the log fire on and I've got all the side lighting on, I tend to light all the candles. This old house, I'm not too precious about candle wax. I love candles on everywhere. So there will be candle wax on the floor, on the surfaces. I'm not too precious about it because really it is the memory of the evening. So I tend to collect candle sticks, different ones, wood, metal. You can see from the condition of the wax on them how well they get used. So this room is very, very cozy, it's very snug, and when guests come, they feel like they're in a slightly different world as well. You go back in time and it's definitely an experience. My professional journey to becoming a colour consultant is quite a long and varied one. Colour consultancy didn't really exist as a profession about 25 years ago. But I realised over a course of time that by default I had been operating with colour through a number of different disciplines. So I originally trained in set design, and set design was something very fundamental to the way I understood to read the world. As a child I went to the ballet a lot, to the theatre a lot, so I was used to seeing lots of layers. Also, I was very involved in gardening. I grew up with a very huge kitchen garden that I was very much involved in. So I learned to read space through layers. That journey took me into floristry, where I then had 3 separate floristry shops. And again, working with colour combinations even more, except this time flowers being used for events, but any kind of event. So I began to understand that colour was relative to emotion and purpose. And through those businesses, I then started doing styling for people's homes as well. I worked a little bit with mid-century design as well as selling and collecting antiques to sell. And eventually, when I had a little antique emporium in Hampstead, I started to consider maybe I want to start using some paints in my shops, and that was really the starting point for stepping out of my little antiques business and floristry business into the world of colour. My mantra to colour is read the light of a room. I think it's totally fine if you are somebody who loves bright, vivid colours, or if you're somebody who likes really calm, soft whites. I work with people who love all different types of colours for their home. But the one thing that I always bring to my consultancy services and that I encourage people to think about at home is read the light. Because the way you understand light in your home can really help you understand how you want the nuances or the hues to change so that you can create either that really bold combination you want or that very soft, subtle one, which has a relationship with the light in a room. So my mantra is read the light of the room. So the room adjoining the dining room is the kitchen, which was formerly the bathroom when I first took the property on. It was a space that had two little hallways off of it as well, which was crazy. It was really, really small. So in order to flip the bathroom to the upstairs, this is the space that I decided to dedicate for the kitchen. So come through, I'd love to show you more. This is one of the smallest rooms in the house, but it is perhaps one of the most intense in terms of what happens here. Because of my Italian heritage and being involved with a kitchen garden, this space I deliberately chose to be very, very calm in terms of colour. So I mixed a colour myself and painted it on the walls, which is a very warm coppery brown. It picks up on the hues of the old copper pots that I have tucked away in the wall over there. And to pull in my Italian aesthetic, I'm using white, very plain white tiles here, which is what my grandmother had in her kitchen in Italy long, long time ago. There wasn't the privilege of having lots of tiles to choose from. People just used very simple white tiles, but I really like the simplicity of them. But the piece that really sings in here is the massive credenza, which is my grandfather's. I brought this back from Italy and I'll never forget the day when it arrived. The guys turned up with the truck, with all the furniture, and they said, it's not going to go, it's not going to go. It came in two pieces and I said, it is going to go, because it simply had to. There was just not the negotiation of it not moving in. And it just so happens that because, like all the walls and ceilings in the house, which are wonky, this particular corner here, you can't even fit a piece of paper in. The credenza literally was made for the kitchen. And this is where I house all my plates, my glasses, my dry products, my pots and pans, my cutlery. One of the things I like the most about it is that it's the perfect worktop height for me, because I'm quite tall. So I like my worktop higher than the average worktop height. And it's a brilliant surface for me to just show off my very prized collection of walnut jug pots, which are very, very old, very, very special. And they just sit here and make the place look interesting without being over cluttered. It's the biggest piece in the kitchen, and it meant that I didn't have to go for the formality of a fitted kitchen, which I just don't like. I wanted something that was quite rustic and very simple. So I've paired the credenza with a freestanding cooker and a trolley which houses all the bits I need for cooking, and then a beautiful Italian marble worktop and a screen of material which basically hides the washing machine, the dishwasher and the tumble dryer. So I have an antique Hellbay fork which I use as a hanger for my various aprons, and I saw it once on a styling shoot and I just thought it was a really clever idea. So in order to hide it, I just hang it over the door, and I use it as a brilliant storage place to hang a linen a linen apron and a couple of really old leather ones. You can also actually use it to slot your glasses in. So if you were to tilt it against a wall like that, you can turn your glasses, wine glasses, upside down, and you could actually use it as a quirky glass storage system for a kitchen. So one of the reasons I wanted the kitchen to remain quite calm with its colours, very natural and rustic, the colours of the pots, such as the three I've got over here, for example, is because I really wanted the emphasis to come from flavour and aroma. And I actually love cooking some of the simplest dishes, the ones that require not too much fuss, but cooked right, they taste the best to me. So I love cooking polenta, and I love cooking a really beautiful tomato sauce, or perhaps a ragu. I've always got shallots, onions and tomatoes in the kitchen because they are my staple. So long as I've got those, I can pretty much have, I pretty much know I've got anything I can make to cook. So my staple, my favourite food to cook, particularly when I want a little bit of comforting, is probably a really simple pasta dish drizzled with beautiful aromatic olive oil, maybe a little bit of dried thyme. This is from Sardinia. Some garlic and some shallots and onions, just slow cooked, beautiful, really delicious. It's so difficult for me to think if I have a favourite colour because I love so many, but I definitely have a tendency towards greens. Everything is on the table for me when it comes to colour because colour teaches me to read the world in different ways that I might not have before. I used to have a real issue with white. I used to find it incredibly dull, incredibly boring, and it never really quite delivered for me. But I've learnt more recently that the different hues and nuances in white can really elevate a space in a way that I never anticipated before. So there isn't really a colour that I can say I won't touch. I actually love them all. So there's a lot more going on upstairs and I would love to show you what I've done. So come and join me. So I'm at the top of the stairs, and the two features which I really love about the stairwell, which is very small, is that I have the original lime walls here, which have beautiful shades of murky, muddy yellows. So I didn't want to paint those. I've left those, and they are a great backdrop for this collection of bird prints and some butterflies that I've picked up on other travels in various antique shops. And to finish them off, I've put them inside this huge gold gilt frame that I picked up from a friend. It just seemed a huge wall and a great space to put a massive frame in what is otherwise a really narrow stairwell, and then to fill the big frame with lots of little frames. So I thought that was quite a clever, quirky trick. And then at the top of the stairs, I am straight into my dressing area, which used to be a room, a small bedroom. But in order to get my grandfather's huge wardrobe in, which is the wardrobe to the chest of drawers downstairs, I actually had to move away some of the panelling that was the rim divider in order to get this in. So I absolutely love this piece. It's got the painting on it, and the colours are just absolutely brilliant. And this space is south facing, so it gets a lot of sun in here. It's a great space just to get ready. I have also my mother's mirror on this side of the wall, which is an old antique piece. And to add my own touch here, I've made this colour here, and I've made the colour on the wall. So I've used a paler shade on the walls as an emulsion, and I've used an eggshell here on the woodwork. And the colours of the story are inspired by my green kimono. I love collecting kimonos. I've got quite a few, but this is one of my more recent ones, and I love the colours of this. So I've used this as the inspiration to make the colour on the wall, a muted version of it. And the lampshades are made by me. So these were plain white lampshades, lamp bases, and I used various colours of green and blue from the colours that I'd mixed downstairs to wash over them and to add in the streaks. And what I really like about them, particularly at night when it's dark outside, is that the colour comes through the parts of the material where it hasn't quite saturated into the linen. So if I turn it off, for example, you'll see it disappears, and then when I turn the light on, the colour comes through. So that was an unexpected surprise, which I really liked. This is a statue from Italy again. She actually came on a very tall plinth and I couldn't fit her in here. So she was a statue from my grandfather's apartment. I think she's probably about 150 years old. She got a little bit damaged in her transportation, but she's very happy there. And every time I look at her, I just think of Liguria in Italy, and I just think of that sense of being so happy when you see the sun and the beautiful colours of Italy and being by the sea. I love vintage luggage. I think luggage makes really good storage spaces for things that you don't really want to see out, such as hairdryers, brushes, all that sort of paraphernalia. So I use two here to store items. I've also got another really lovely one here which I inherited, which has stickers from travels all around the world. I think it's such a lovely, quirky piece. Again, storing items which I want to keep but don't necessarily want to use on a daily basis. In the wardrobe, which has the long hanging space, is where I keep my kimono collection. And I tend to use these sometimes for styling shoots, sometimes for my colour consultancies. They're very old. I don't really have a favourite one because I love them all. And I think what's great about them is that you can wear them with jeans, you can wear them just as they are. They keep you warm, but they also keep you cool because they're silk. And you can jazz them up with a really funky belt, even some cowboy boots or flat shoes or some heels. They're just absolutely great. I get a lot of colour inspiration from these, and in fact this is exactly why I chose the colours on the wall here, inspired by the green kimono. And also when mixing belts with them, such as vintage pieces of silk, so you could take something like this fantastic pink and tie it around the green kimono and maybe have a pair of pink shoes or a clutch bag or some earrings that match with the pink, and you've just got an outfit straight away with minimal effort. It's just brilliant for me. It works. I love it. Most people who are going on a colour journey when they're renovating or decorating are undergoing a change in life. Now that could simply be that they're moving home, but that is a change in a chapter of their life. In some cases, people have separated or split up. That's another change. Or perhaps they're going from just 2 to 3 with the arrival of a child. And I'm very sensitive to this when I walk into somebody's home. Usually the colours that people want or need tend to be relative to the situation they are in or the situation they want to grow into. So sometimes when I'm with couples, I have to mediate between one partner wanting a colour a certain way and another partner wanting a colour a different way, and then reaching that middle ground or that compromise in helping them understand how they might want to live in this space together. So the room that you can see behind me is the master bedroom, and when I first bought the house, when you came to the top of the stairs, the bedroom door started here because of the wood panelling wall that was dividing this bedroom here, which is now the dressing area. So when I reconfigured the space, it enabled me to bring the bedroom door further back to here, allowing a hallway to the reconfigured bathroom, which we'll have a look at later. So come into the bedroom, I'd love to show you. This space here is south facing and has just the most glorious sun in the afternoon. And so the colour that I used on the wall was a very rich amethyst, and the reason for that is because it reminds me of the rich colours in the sunset sky in Liguria. Over the sea there is a certain type of lilac that appears at sunset, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper at night, and it's that colour that I wanted to capture. So I've washed the walls in that colour, whereas for the woodwork I've used something a little more contrasting, which is quite pared back and goes really well with the cubicloths, like this one here, for example, that I was explaining earlier on as part of my African collection. I have quite a few of these, but here's just one example that I drape over the doors. I love to drape material over doors. I think it's a great way of accessorising a door, which is otherwise just very plain and simple. So I always encourage people to drape beautiful fabrics or textiles over doors. In this case, I'm using cubicloths, and I have another framed version here. And then I think one of the best features for my bedroom here is similarly to the downstairs living room where I have that woodland scene. I have here a collection of images which every single painting I've sourced from a charity shop find. I've thrown these up on the wall in a slightly random way, but at the same time trying to balance colour. So for example, you will see that I have a lot of green and purple and blue here, but I've balanced it with a painting on the left-hand side that's quite heavy with the greens and the blues as well. So they are randomly put up in terms of how the space will allow it, allow the painting to go up. And they're generally scenes of buildings in places or the human form, such as the angels down there as well. And another one down here. And they vary in age. So some of them are antique, some of them are mid-century, and some of them are contemporary. One of the favourite ones that I like to look at is the one that I see the first thing in the morning and the last thing at night when I go to bed. And that is the scene of Portofino, which is where I like to visit when I go to Liguria. Again, another charity shop find. It was a real thrift buy. And I remember when I saw it, it had lots of frames in front of it, and all I could see was this top part here. And I just knew straight away that's Portofino. And sure enough, when I pulled away all the other frames, there it was. So that's what I like to wake up to and go to sleep to every day. And I have one more very small salting pot in the bedroom to the collection downstairs, and that fits really neatly inside the fireplace there. Because I like to layer, and I like to layer vertically as well as horizontally, I've used over in the corner of the room one of the antique water vessels I have, and I like to just keep a very simple display of either eucalyptus leaves, maybe a rose. In this case, I've got some branches with some spring buds that have come on there. It's very simple, but it's very effective for me. I absolutely love the whole philosophy behind the concept of home. It's something that I've studied and focused on for a very long time. And that's partly because I've moved so many times over the past 20 years, and each time I've tried to find the essence of what actually makes a home a home. And what I've come to realise in the later years is the essence of a home is really what your story is with it, and how you feel that you are translating that through colour and through the objects that you collect. It is so important to have a narrative with your home, with your space, because nobody else is going to have the same home as you. So it's really important that you can get your inspiration from magazines and from online platforms, but you need to be able to edit those choices and curate it in a way that makes it a soulful one for you, so that you can have that story with your home. And there you have it. You have what I've called an aesthetic narrative, and that's something that I specialise in and try to help people achieve. What is their aesthetic narrative, the soul of their home? What I love most about my home is the movement of light and the mood of it. It's a very soulful space. It has dark moments and it has bright moments. So without doubt, what I love most about my home is the way the light moves throughout it, which gives me a chance to experience the spaces in different ways throughout different times of the day, and indeed throughout different times of the year. So adjoining the bedroom is the bathroom, which has a little lobby with an antique mirror from Italy and a couple of sea scenes, paintings. And then you come through to the bathroom, which is slightly different in colour, and that's because I had one rule, which was I wanted the decorative objects and the colours that I used to remind me of my childhood in Italy when I used to swim in the sea in Sardinia. And so the colour that I chose for the tiles is a very particular type of chartreuse that reminds me of swimming through seaweed in Sardinia. There's a spot where I sometimes go. The colour of the seaweed is so particular, and when you swim through it, you are literally submerging yourself into this beautiful chartreuse. So the green tiles have variations of this colour, so it's not a block colour, it's not a matte colour, there are different degrees of the colour in there. So when I'm in that space, I'm literally submerged again into the seaweed. And to kind of play on that a little bit more, I've got this fantastic succulent plant which really does look like some of the seaweed. And just like the rest of the house where I have themes, I have more themed paintings here which are of sea scenes, shells, boats, random pictures that I found in random places again. And I love to do that maximalist thing of overloading the space with lots of paintings. Whereas the antique bookcase here holds some of my most prized corals and shells and sea urchins. The sea urchins are in fact what I used to dive for in Italy. So I have lots of these just sitting around, and quirky books such as The Wonders of the Shore and some antique corals that I've picked up, and the abalone shells. I used to play with the abalone shells actually, like marbles in the beach in the sand. And I think the drama of the bathroom here really is using the curtains instead of shower curtains, which I pull over a little bit more when I'm having a bath. I light all my candles in there, and it's just an experience. It's really relaxing, it's beautiful lighting, and it just really gets me ready to shut down for the day. The candle holders here are the Fleur de Lys symbol, which is again playing on my surname, and a bit like the grate in the fireplace downstairs. They were a gift from an interior designer friend, and they're great. They work really well for me. And I didn't want a conventional bathroom, just like the kitchen isn't conventional, so I sourced a cabinet that was the right size for me and a fantastic large basin, and had that mounted on top. So again, it's that very relaxed look in the bathroom, and I've put two of my very old urns from my very early floristry days that I've kept, and they decorate the windowsill just right for me. In the corner I've got a couple of oars, boat oars, which I thought was quite a quirky little touch, and a great sea scene again of a woman by the water. When I was designing the bathroom, I decided to use the original panelling that I found behind some stud work in the wall here when I was repairing. So this panelling here was actually the original woodwork used on the inside of the wall here. Not so much at the time the property was built, more so when it was probably renovated a long time ago, but it was so beautiful with the variations in the colour that instead of disposing of it, I decided to adapt it so I could use it as the panelling for the bath instead of having a conventional panelling or plastic even. This bathroom really does set me up for the day. It's a great space to come into. I find it very relaxing and invigorating at the same time. The word home to me means a space where I can transport myself to beautiful memories of my past, things that I cherish, and a space where I can grow as a person.
Thanks for watching. For more Homeworthy content, be sure to like and subscribe.